Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
Welcome to Crosstabs with Reagan and Bryan Iverson, coming to you live from not the Eastern Oregon Economic Summit, where all the cool people are at. Bryan and I are in our offices, which is boring. But I bet the people out there are having a lot of fun. Today is tour day. I think there's several different tours that are many, many hours long. They started at 8 a.m. local time. Got to remember this. Mountain time is what the time they're on. So everything's an hour ahead of wherever you're at in Pacific, which I would guess 99.9% of our listeners are in the Pacific time zone, but maybe I'm wrong.
There's one or few in Iowa that listen to us. I know. I picked up a few listeners for us.
Well, that's awesome.
I'm trying, Reagan. I'm trying to get some, but I am glad I'm not on a tour. I think Vicky had to be up at 6 a.m. Of course, you know, she can always text me at 6 a.m. because I'm always up at 6 a.m. So that's usually never a problem. And she thinks it's fun when she gets up early, and then she has to let me know that she got up early.
I get up at 6 a.m., but I'm not usually up by 6 a.m.
Yeah, okay.
It takes me a few minutes to roll out of bed and get the coffee going. I should put a Keurig. You know what I've thought about doing, Brian? Putting a Keurig right next to my bed so I can just start the coffee. But I feel like the coffee forces me downstairs, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it's a little much. I think I usually make the coffee the night before, like not made. So all I got to do is hit the button, right? And then sometimes I'll have like a leftover cup from the day before, so I'll heat that up in the microwave.
That's disgusting, Brian. That is, so I am notorious for leaving my coffee in the microwave, but if it's not the same day's coffee, it's gone. I'm not drinking that.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah, I don't
Yesterday's
really mind
coffee,
it.
terrible.
Vicky gives me shit for that too, but I don't really find it to be that big of a thing. So
that can't taste good, Brian. That's not good. That's a bad thing to learn. I guess you're not perfect.
Hey, listen, Reagan, I can't be perfect. So, but however, you know what is disgusting is that Keurig stuff is usually when when you go to hotels, you know what the worst is? Nobody really drinks decaf. What is that, like 10% of the market, maybe?
I can't even imagine who's drinking.
And they always do those Keurigs at the hotels, and they always put like 2 decaf and 2 caffeinated ones in there.
Yeah.
And it drives me crazy. I'm like, who's you drinking the decaf? And the worst is sometimes there'll be like 3 decaf and like 1 regular, and we won't catch it. So in the morning, like if we get up and then I make that, because I'm always up first, and then there's only 3 decafs. Guess he's going down to the lobby.
Nice. Yes. And you got 2 people per room. If you only put 2, like if you got 2 people in a room and you only put 2 of the Keurigs, that's only 1 day's worth of coffee.
Yeah, I know. So, it's just that's now I know the Keurigs definitely make sense if you're from a hotel standpoint. Like doing actual coffee is kind of dumb, but I think that there's a better way of doing it. I think some of the hotels are trying to figure it out. I think you're almost best not even putting coffee in the room. I think that if you had really good coffee downstairs, I could throw my shorts on and my flip-flops, right, and go down. If I knew there was good coffee in the lobby, I wouldn't worry about there being a Keurig in my hotel.
True.
But usually it seems like they don't have both. But just my pet peeve on coffee hotel.
Listen, if you're staying in a hotel, coffee is the next most important thing to figure out. So they should have it if they have it figured out for you.
Who's in hotels these days? I bet Drazen's probably doing a lot of hotels these days. We should ask her when we have her on.
Well, funny story. I just got the email from Ashley. Shout out to Ashley, friend of the pod. Media advisory for Drazen to announce the Drazen plan. That'll happen Tuesday at 11:15. Exact location provided upon RSVP. Anyway, I have seen some of this. So I think if you go to thedrazenplan.com, which is running in one of our advertisements I saw on streaming, that some of it is on there. But I saw a clip not that long ago about Drazen talking about data centers. She was doing that on Coin, I think, maybe.
Yeah, Coin. Yeah.
What did you think of that? Did you watch that?
I did. One, I think her approach is pretty interesting. I don't think she's probably well versed on data centers now. She probably had
Oh,
a drip
sure.
through fire
Oh,
hose
sure.
over the last month or two. So I won't say that. But it's never been a space in which she's worked in the legislature. It's not really been a space anybody in the legislature has worked in, to be honest. So, and to be fair to Kotek and I think Grayson, but I did like her answer in regards to where, now all of a sudden this is a problem when we've had data centers in the state of Oregon since, I mean, Facebook opened in 2012. Google's been there in the Dalles for what, since early, geez, like 2006, seven, somewhere in there. They started there.
Did you really just say 6'7", Brian? Come on. You gotta be smarter than that. You can't let that stuff slip through. The 6'7" is everywhere.
That is funny. So
yeah, somewhere in there.
I think that she made a good point of laying the facts down, which is that she's correct. We probably do have our overshare of data centers in Oregon, relative to say other states, right? But I don't know if there's really an argument to be made for fair share for this or that. But I think the reality for data centers, it's all about location. It's not really about, it's like arguing about where an RV park should go, right? Because nobody wants the RV park next to their house. So it's like a data center. Nobody really wants the data center in their town. Well, some towns actually don't mind it. I think some towns actually have done really well with data centers next to them, and some towns are going to embrace that. And so you can't, as a state, just say no data centers, period. I think Lakeview would love to have a data center, and I think they would jump up and down to have a data center in Lakeview. I think, there's a lot of communities. I was in Arlington, and Arlington is getting a data center, and they were pretty excited. And they're nothing has changed. Arlington has had the same 600 people living there since the 600 people moved there. And besides being the dump for Portland, they have no other industry. So the idea that they can have, and the data center that works for Arlington is coming because there's so much wind power and solar power that has been developed right up on top of the hill from Arlington. And now all those power lines are going right past where a data center would be. Isn't this what the Democrats have wanted? Is renewable energy, and data centers are the ones using it.
Well, and I mean, this gets back to the whole thing, which is that data centers, I think, is really just a proxy fight. It's not actually about the data centers. Data centers are the boogeyman that people are blaming for high electricity bills. If their electricity bills were low, I don't think data centers would be taking the hit. High property taxes. Again, most people don't know how property taxes work, and in Oregon, they're especially complicated. I don't think in most cases that a data center is actually costing you money on your property taxes. They may not pay as high a rate as they're supposed to if they get a break, but that doesn't mean they're increasing your property taxes. Yeah. I think people are playing fast and loose. And so it's this idea of, well, my property tax bill is high and my power bill is high, and I'm hearing a lot about drought, and I would like to blame somebody. And instead of blaming bad policy for years in the state of Oregon that's increased the cost of energy, has not allowed us to conserve and access water, and has continued to push higher and higher taxes, whether it's property or different areas, that instead of blaming the years and years of voting Democrat, we're going to blame data centers. And that's happening all over the country, is with different policies that have maybe increased, right, cost of living, right? And that's kind of the biggest one that we're hearing. Democrats are running on cost of living because there's a Republican in the White House. And if there was a Democrat in the White House, Republicans would be running on cost of living. That's just how the world works, right? And some of it is probably President Trump's policies, different policies that he's done, because he's prioritizing different things, not just affordability. There's also national security. There's also these other things. And so he's balancing and seeing all of this. And most Oregonians, most Americans are just saying, something costs more, and I don't know anything about the war in Iran or whatever else, or the tariffs or whatever. So he's making moves to try to to set America up for different things, and short-term pain, long-term gain is guessing what his strategy is going to be. Right now, the short-term pain, losing in the midterms would be some short-term pain. But if he makes long-term gains, maybe that's stuff Republicans can run on in a few years too. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I did like Senator Drazen is correct though when she does lay this is another one of those things that you can lay at the feet of Kotek and Democrats in Oregon because they've been in charge for the last 15 years since we've had data centers and they haven't piped up once.
Nope.
In regards to data centers until all of a sudden it's politically expedient for them to be anti-data center. So I think that's a very fair argument to make against Democrat supermajorities in Oregon is like, oh, now you care about data centers after people in Hillsborough threw out a Democrat because they're somebody running on an anti-Democrat or an anti-data center platform, and Hillsborough's gone to the crazy end of the pool, and you don't want to be next, so therefore now you're anti-data center when you guys were all for data centers when it was Intel coming in and creating jobs and adding to the Democrat coffers. And so I think that's a fair argument for her to make. I just didn't, and maybe I'm wrong, but did you in that argument with I didn't really hear where she for or against data centers because I didn't really get an exact. I just kind of heard her laying out the groundwork, but I didn't hear her say that she would put a moratorium or not on them.
No, I think she did say something about, and I couldn't tell if it was eliminate tax breaks or reduce them for data centers. And I don't think we have specific tax breaks for data centers in Oregon law. We have tax breaks that are in certain zones, and they count for all kinds of industrial projects. And so if you bring, basically what they are is incentives. If you bring a big company, local government has the ability to slash that tax bill. It's not the state level, it's all local. And the local government can say, we're going to forego some of this property tax revenue. We can take a one-time payment. We can do other community benefit agreements. We're hearing a lot about those CBAs. I've started finally to see ads about pro data center ads interspersed between Drazen and Kotek ads and Bynum ads. But they're bringing out that there's benefits that they can bring. And you see all over the country, you can read about these big data centers. They're signing deals with local governments to do, to pay people's property taxes or reduce their property taxes, reduce their power bills, all these things. That makes it. And by the way, data centers are not industrial in the sense like they're manufacturing where they output negative stuff. It's like one of the cleanest types of industry. You could have a data center literally so close to your house and not even ever know it. There's so many people that are anti-data center in all over the country that live near a data center and they don't even know it because it looks like an Amazon facility.
Or have for so long, and now all of a sudden they know, right? Yeah.
And now they pretend. Yeah. So it's ultimately, I think, obviously, again, a lot of confusion. I agree. I didn't see her grab hold of the issue, just as I haven't seen Kotek grab hold of the issue. They're trying to slowly move themselves forward, but no one wants to grab the rail because it might be a lightning rod.
I would agree. They're both dancing around it a little bit, but they also don't want to give up on business, right? And what you're talking about is economic development. So in the world of development, you have like a long-term enterprise zone, and these are, of course, yes, local decisions, however, given to them by the ORS that allows
by the state,
to do it,
true,
right? So you have a short-term enterprise zone that you can create for somebody, which is usually 3 to 5 years. And you have the long-term rural enterprise zone, which is also was designed so rural communities could recover from the logging that Portland Democrats killed us on. So, by the way, and then now look at it, Portland Democrats again trying to take away data centers when, that's right, when rural economies are starting to do good again.
And by the way, every session they try to roll back or eliminate these tax breaks because they hate quote unquote corporate welfare. Now, the thing that always trips them up is, of course, you say, well, we're giving tax breaks to big corporations. Well, here's the thing. You don't know if that corporation made their determination to come based on that property tax break. And a lot of them do, because that helps a ton, because it's a long-term fixed cost that they can now control. And when a lot of times they say they would have come here anyway because the quality of life is so amazing. And I was like, I hate to break it to you because all these companies also locate in places that you do not think are amazing, like Ohio or wherever. They usually choose red states that are they say are bad places to live, but those projects came because of those tax breaks. So once you eliminate those projects stop showing up, and it's going to hurt more. And the thing I don't want to see happen again, as I've said, so Tom Tiffany is the Wisconsin governor candidate. He said end tax breaks for data centers. Now, I don't know if, again, it's the same situation as Oregon, where do they have special ones? Probably not. Does he just want to eliminate it so they can't get any special tax treatment at all? He's running in a blue state. Mike Rogers, he said he backs a 1-year moratorium. His Democrat opponent does not back a moratorium, which I think is interesting again. Even though he is kind of a socialist candidate, and the moratoriums, I want to be totally transparent. I am aware the moratorium push is coming from the DSA people. Now they're pushing 2 years, they're pushing 3 years, they're pushing 5 years. Those are all too long. And again, I don't even still think the 1 year is a good idea, but we're going to see now, is that a make or break difference for Rogers in Michigan? We're going to see as the election unfolds if Kotek and Drazen go more extreme in their positions to try to win. I mean, Kotek's already making extreme overtures to that side just recently, in fact.
Well, because I think, you're right. It will be curious to see. And you were right to say that it was only a matter of time for a Republican came out for the 1 year. So good prediction. You're way better at it.
Again, I think it's bad policy, so I don't want to be excited about it. But in places where winning is the most important thing, like you don't get to govern as a Republican if you lose. So you have to win. And I think, again, like you talked about, it is a political expedient play to try to latch onto it, but it's also responsiveness to voters. And the question is always, are we governing for the better good, or are we governing based on what our constituents think? Because sometimes our constituents have an opinion that we disagree with, right? And that's always the choice. So I'm not necessarily, again, saying this is all good. I think it is bad. It hurts rural Oregon when we can't have data centers, but does it allow her to win and do a lot more good, even if the moratorium ends up being bad? And by the way, you can't executive order. Both Kotek and Drazen have said you can't executive order a ban. There's no power to do that. No. So it has to be legislative.
Because they shouldn't have the ability to ban one specific industry from siting in Oregon. Like you could just say, nope. You know what? I no longer want shoe companies in Oregon, so I'm just going to executive order it. Let's put a moratorium on, clothing companies. Like you can't do that, and there needs to be the debate. But going after one industry, I think is silly because you don't have the evidence. I believe it's fine to look at the transparency of data centers, but the reality is if I'm a welding company and I'm bringing jobs to a rural community, I should have the same ability to get those tax breaks that the data centers do, and they do today. They do. And it's a low bar for a reason. The whole point of saying if you create 35 jobs or whatever, we're going to give you this incentive. But make no mistake, like when a company comes into Oregon and they say, okay, I'm going to buy 100 acres of industrial land that the county owns, doesn't matter what county. Let's just say they own it. Well, right now the county's paying nothing in property taxes, and they get the sell of that industrial land. So they sell that, which is a nice hit to the coffers. And then that company sites on that 100 acres. Well, no matter what, they always have to pay property taxes on the land. The only discount they're getting is on the building and then the equipment inside the building. Those are the only two things that you can get an enterprise zone exemption on. You always have to pay property taxes on the land. So now buildings are usually the stuff that costs a lot. And so with the buildings, you can get a long-term, which is what what Meta did here in Prineville. So they got a 15-year exemption on building one. There's 11 buildings. Building one drops onto the tax rolls for the first time in January 2027, which will double our property taxes in Prineville.
Double receipts. It doesn't double what you're paying. It doubles what Crook is making from property taxes.
Yes.
That's
now
huge.
Imagine basically almost about every year for the next 10 years, another building drops on.
Yep.
as it comes off the 15-year long term. And then all the material inside, all the servers and everything are usually on a 3 or a 5-year rolling rolling enterprise zone exemption, because of the equipment that's in there. So you're creating all this sort of stuff. Meta has self-annexed the park district into they self-annex themselves into the Kirk County Park District, so they'll pay the park district fees and everything.
Yep.
Which will allow the park district to basically be sustainable for as long as there's data centers.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like Meta's been really good about that. Apple hasn't been really good about that as far as like self-annexing and doing certain things. Apple's like it's just another location. I think it just be like Apple's like way more of the longer term down the corporate food chain, right? As far as it goes, like they just look at, they're like, but they follow the letter of the law, right? So I think the biggest thing with data centers that we got to do from a legislative standpoint is to say, okay, if you want to have a data center in your community, that's fine, but here's the parameters we want to make sure that we're attaining, right? No secrecy, make sure that there's, and I think the legislature can do that. Like we want a water dashboard. We want to make sure that you're using, the best technology in which to save as much water for the community as possible. And if you're not, you need to be transparent about that water you're using. You be transparent about the number of jobs you're creating. You got to be transparent about the amount of power you're using. And I think transparency is kind of the key to everything. And if you make,
I do worry about the water dashboard specifically, because there's lots of attempts to clamp down on ag and other types of water users, and so if they force them all to use the dashboard too, I think that could create. But I see the point of that.
The city has it now, Reagan.
Oh, they do. Okay,
knows exactly. It's just not public, but the city knows exactly how much water each of those.
Well, sure, and I guess you can just publicly request. It's a public record, so anybody can request it.
They know how much water I'm using in my yard, right? If I live in the city limits now. Well, remember, Emma, we just posted that. Who's the big water users in Portland again?
Yes, I did not know that Representative Daniel Wynn was an urban farmer, but apparently he is. I don't know that I'd classify urban farming as farming, but nice of him very clever framing. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
I think maybe he has a large garden, is what I'm thinking. But here's the thing too. I think that, and to wrap this part up, because we do need to talk more about Kotek and her strategy here going forward, is there is still a lot of controversy. The candidates seem like they're managing it. Nobody's embracing it because they're also worried it's a third rail. Now, of course, the good saying there, I think this is from The West Wing, is it's called the third rail because it can shock you, but it's also where all the power is, right?
Yeah.
So there's the potential for power in this, but no candidate yet is willing to seize that to try to win it. It'll be interesting to see if somebody does grab hold of that, or if they continue to sort of make it a secondary issue that they try to manage. So referencing Kotek, and I just got a hold of this not that long ago. So Kotek got the Working Families Party's endorsement. And I think this was one of the things that she was attempting to do to try to prevent any more defections. There's a Pacific Green candidate we've already talked about that's going to be on the ballot, and he's the only other candidate. And you had been doing some research showing us like how many candidates are normally on the ballot, and we're going to have a low number this year in the general election.
But only 3, right?
Yeah, only the 3. And what has it been tipped over the last 10 years?
8, I think, is what we noticed, right? Like the high was 8.
I think the high was 6.
6, okay.
In the general.
Usually 5 or 6 candidates, I would say. It's always kind of been the case, somewhere in there, because you got Working Families, Libertarian, Green Party.
Constitution had a candidate.
Constitution. Yeah, Betsy Johnson ran as a peer independent last time, not the independent party, but the independent or a non.
Right.
I think that's and then you'd have, is that probably it, right? I
think that's about it. So so that's what we've had, and now you only have the 1. Now the 1 could result in fewer people voting, or it could consolidate a chunk of the vote there and have a sizable. So she needs an opportunity as being in this, I would say, I'd say Kotek's a progressive, but there are obviously elements of the progressive party that think she hasn't gone far enough on various issues. So we'll call her an establishment Democrat. As an establishment Democrat, she needs as much lefty cred as she can get, and she's got the Working Family Party endorsement. Now, here's the thing. They didn't just show up at their meeting and go, oh, my goodness, Tina Kotek, our choice is between Kotek and Dre's, and we better go with her. No, they tried to extract some concessions, and in their press release, they put out there on public, they put her on blast. They said, this is what you're committed to do. Defend immigrant communities by enforcing Oregon sanctuary protections. I do not think that was hard for her. She's already been doing all that stuff. Yeah. Democrats aren't going to give an inch on the sanctuary law because it's one place where they can go and talk to some of the different, what they call BIPOC communities and say, we're standing for you against the federal government, against Republicans, against whatever, right?
That also means, without saying it, basically they stand for open borders.
They do, 100%. Yes,
including
and they
drugs
don't
and illegal everywhere. They want it all open. Let it open. Sex trade. Fuck.
They will not. They will not cooperate. And I think that's interesting because Oregon doesn't typically have on our policing. We haven't increased our police in decades, so we have less resources to deal with more crime, and so we don't have the resources. So one smart way, instead of adding hundreds of officers, would be to collaborate with the federal government, and on certain types of people committing those crimes, they just said, nope, we're not going to collaborate.
Yeah, not us.
Holding corporations accountable to the commitments they make to Oregon communities when they receive public dollars. Again, this was probably pretty easy because even when we did the CHIPS Act, that includes a clawback provision that if the folks who utilize Oregon CHIPS funds don't do what they're required to do, we get to go back and claw back money. And it's on a percentage basis. So if they did 25% of what they said they would do, we're only going to take 75% back. They keep 25. So that stuff's already pretty standard at this point. It's not like we're just voting to give massive corporate giveaways. That hasn't happened in a long time. Yeah. Protecting farm worker overtime. This is interesting and controversial because Democrats did this few years ago, and it is widely known on the farm worker side to be a disaster, to result in cut hours. On the farm side, a disaster because it increases costs. And so now she's committed to keeping it. So I think that there have been legislators who on the Democratic side who keep trying to push reform. Now they keep running into their own lobbies of BIPOC workers and working families parties who think farm worker overtime is amazing, or at least pretend it's amazing. And now they won't be able to get that past the governor if she keeps her promise here, which we'll come back to that. Advancing universal preschool. Now, Brian, I feel like she took a bunch of heat for trying to change preschool for all in Multnomah County. Am I making that up, or was that real?
No, she took a bunch of heat. Yeah, been a shit show.
And now she flipped and says she's going to advance it statewide.
Yeah.
Crazy. Disaster. It's because that tax is so high on Multnomah County. It's one of the things that makes them a high tax area in Oregon, already a high tax state. And so now she's like, nope, we're going to take it statewide. So yikes. Expanding access to higher education. Sure. Knock yourself out. Everybody says that. I think it's going to be tough to do in this environment. I guess we're expanding access to higher education by keeping Southern Oregon University afloat. So, that if it closes, that would reduce access. So she wants to strengthen, or she's required to strengthen, campaign finance transparency. I don't know how you get more transparent than what we're already doing, but maybe she'll find a way. Investing in restorative justice programs that reduce recidivism. Democrats have been doing that for years because they would like to close all the prisons. Now, I think they probably negotiated this because I bet the Working Families Party started with, what if we closed all the prisons? And she said, I can't do that actually, and win an election. And so they said, okay, how about restorative justice? And she says,
let's
great.
Just call it that. But basically they want no prisons and they want no crime because, property crime is a crime of necessity, Reagan.
Absolutely, Brian. Poor. Yeah. If I don't have a truck and you have a truck, I can take your truck. Yeah. It's the needs of it, because you have several trucks, Brian, and the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah. I got one I leave my keys in if anybody wants to steal it. Bring them by. I got good insurance. I wouldn't mind getting rid of it.
And then the last thing she committed to do, which is very, very funny to me, meeting with the Working Families Legislative Caucus during the legislative session. So not only does she have to have a meeting, it's got to be during the legislative session.
Who is the Working Families Legislative Caucus? Do
So
we have any members that we
I
know of?
think it is essentially the Democrat candidates who are endorsed by Working Families Party, is my understanding. So it's like people like it's everybody from Farah Chaichi all the way over to Paul Evans. Anybody who earns that endorsement is
Oh,
essentially part of that caucus. There is a separate
I thought that was just the
socialist.
Munoz sisters.
Well, no. So there's a separate DSA caucus that does include some of the same membership, but I think people like Paul Evans is probably not a member of that. He's not really a DSA guy, but he is a Working Families guy. And a lot of these guys are part of the Working Families caucus because of the name, because it sounds good, because they support working families. I mean, everybody, Republicans should join the caucus for working families, you know? But it's that kind of thing that is really what they're promoting is supposedly working families policy, not specifically Democrat socialist agenda. So it's important to draw those lines. Otherwise, I will get emails and texts from Democrats in the Capitol who are telling me that their boss is not a socialist, which I understand. And thank you for your boss not being a socialist. We appreciate it. So interesting commitments that she's made.
So
Some
now
stuff
we
that
have
goes.
Working Families for Kotek, and then we have Libertarian Party for Drazen.
Yep.
So the time's passed for the Constitutional Party to do anything, which they're basically debunked anyways because they don't have enough numbers anymore to really. I think they were delisted, right?
I think they were delisted. I think I read that.
So an independent party didn't make an actual nomination on either one of them.
I think they decided against getting involved in the governor's race. They'll be involved in other races, but they didn't want to get involved in the governor's race. Probably because Drazen isn't liberal enough for them, and because they can't support Republicans. And Kotek, I'm not sure why they wouldn't support her. I'm assuming they're just grumpy with her on transparency because they're big in the campaign finance. They want people to be able to spend like $10 on elections, and any more than $10, and it's big money. So.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Crazy.
I think, well, you know what? Having three candidates. So if you assume the Green Party guy doesn't do anything, he pulls, maybe does he? I wonder now if there's only three, if he pulls more of the disenfranchised
I
vote,
think he does. I think he
so
totally
maybe
does.
if he punches his ticket to 3 or 4%, he's literally determining the winner of this race.
He could be. He certainly could be. And that is, I think the part about that I'm wondering about is it's got to be close enough like 2022, where if he gets, let's say 5%, that his 5% is the difference. Now, who knows where that's coming from, if that's people that could have voted for Drazen or not, if she wins or loses, right? But,
Yeah.
you never know.
Wonder how many independent expenditures will be on behalf of the Green Party.
I think Democrats will be running independent expenditures, showing Brett Smith holding an AR-15 and throwing an illegal immigrant in jail. And I think Republicans will probably be running ads showing him on a organic farm, holding the hands of various immigrant communities. And they'll paint him to be whatever they need to be to try to win. That's probably what'll happen. And it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that should be fun. It'll be fun. I mean, it's going to be fun. I was looking at the media stuff. So I was like trying to see like what they're buying on TV. I thought it was because they're on TV, but they're actually fairly selective. Like they both spent about the same on KATU in Portland.
Yep.
They both had about a $90,000 2-week buy, which is pretty hefty for KATU. That's pretty big buy.
It's early to be doing that too in those kind of numbers.
But none of them had KGW.
Okay.
Which I thought, so they were both, it was kind of funny how they're playing chicken with each other. You buy on this TV, I go buy on that TV.
No one's willing to give up any ground yet.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of that, but they're also trying to hoard as much money as they can because when you get to October, you're just hemorrhaging cash at that point. So you try to, but yet you want to be out there with your messaging as much as you can. Yeah. So it's the jockeying is kind of fun at this point, but Kotek has a sizable cash advantage. Which is going to make a huge difference come October. Cause that's usually what in every one of these races, it's always like, okay, who's going to go first to spend? Who's not going to go first to spend? And you're trying to hold your money as long as you
Mm-hmm.
can until the other
Mm-hmm.
guy, especially if you're the incumbent, you want to hold your cash as long as you can so the challenger can't gain any ground on you. And the same thing
Right.
happens in these legislative races where I think Kotek would be better off spending more because you always get money late.
Yeah.
I think she would be better off spending down some of her cash because she can always go find, there's always, a couple million under the couch cushions in October, right? So I think
Yep.
she would be better off, I think, spending her money now and trying to position Drazen in a spot because Drazen doesn't have the luxury of spending an extra couple of $1,000,000 right now. So,
Nope.
but yeah, that's I'm not in that room, so it's fine. It's almost more fun to sit back here and watch what they do and commentate on it than it is.
Oh, 100%. I wouldn't want to be part of any of these races right now. I have a lot of respect for everybody who is involved in the arena this time. Because I mean, especially on our side, because right now, obviously, a Republican in the White House is just so hard to deal with. So
Yeah, it really is. So I want to hit one more thing before we go because I think this was a pretty good discussion. And you brought up your Mike Rogers thing, so I wanted to bring up my thing.
yes,
So near total massacre for the Freedom Caucus in Wyoming primaries.
yep,
I found this to be fascinating that Wyoming, which is considered to be probably one of the most conservative states in the country, if not the most conservative state in the country, and they just had their primary. Was it 2 weeks ago?
yeah,
Somewhere around there.
August 19th.
This was in the Cowboy State Daily, which is actually kind of a pretty good little online newspaper. I was kind of ready. So Tuesday marked a rough night for the Wyoming Freedom Caucus as its members and allies fell to a slew of legislative newcomers in the Republican primary election. So literally like everyone but one of their Freedom Caucus members, which was a ton of them, got just slammed in the primaries. So I thought it was because the Freedom Caucus usually is the far right of the deal, but they have gone so far right that the normal Republicans said, that's enough.
Yeah.
Like they said in here, Wyoming citizens spoke loud and clear. They want true governance, not child's play. And I really think that's a very strong argument to make. Like they just don't want you yelling and screaming from the rooftops. They said, they want good governance regardless. You still need people to govern. So I just thought this was a really interesting article in regards to a Freedom Caucus, which is kind of like a Tea Party kind of movement, I guess. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can call it that, I think. But to get just slayed in these primaries, and most of it is as maybe it's anti-incumbent is maybe more important than anti-Freedom Caucus. But I think as they took over power, what I want to say is like at the end of the day, people are still requiring you to govern. Like you're still supposed to do the job. And so you can't, it's like giving a 2-year-old I want to drive, and then you let them drive, right? And you put them on your lap and they're driving their steering wheel, and you're always kind of holding on to the bottom right-hand corner of the steering wheel while you have them on your lap driving through the ranch. Like I think that's what always is the Republican Party. The Freedom Caucuses get on there and we're like, well, you guys can drive a little bit of your fun, but we're going to just hold on to the steering wheel down here and make sure you don't send it into a ditch. Apparently they sent it into a ditch in Wyoming and people kind of had enough.
Well, and so here's the thing. And I just went back to the homepage of that Cowboy State Daily and I hit politics. PAC that spent $500,000 helping Freedom Caucus had 87% failure rate. So, and I mean, Wyoming's not a huge state, so 500 grand quite a bit for these legislative races. And I think one of the things that at least that the people who won and some of their supporters are saying is basically that people were tired of the negativity and they were tired of them not acting like grown-ups and governing like grown-ups. And that is, I think, I'm going to be diplomatic about this. If there were Freedom Caucus if there was a Freedom Caucus in Oregon, which there's not an organized one, but let's say there were, I
Yeah.
would say that my expectation is that they and the Freedom Caucus at the federal level all behave in a childish way that does not include responsible governing as one of its core tenets. And they tend to be also very negative in their outlook and how they behave. So that seems accurate to me. And I do think we are turning a corner in the Republican Party, partly based on Trump, who campaigns constantly against these Freedom Caucus guys because he's tired of them being impediments to the agenda that he's trying to run, which is a popular agenda. It's not the most conservative agenda on every issue, but it is a popular.
Thomas
Right.
Massey got his ass handed to him. Right, he was the Freedom Caucus guy. Chip Roy
Yeah.
in Texas.
And
He's
these guys,
the one.
and this is the thing I want to point out. These guys at the national level go, oh, it's the Israel PAC that defeated us. Now, they may have been contributors, but Israel PAC doesn't give to state legislative races. The
No.
Americans for Israel PAC, they don't. So how do you explain all these losses in Wyoming? Like voter fraud or whatever, I guess is probably what they're going to claim.
I'm sure that's what they're saying.
From guaranteed all but one of the counties has a Republican running their elections. But anyway, at the end of the day, they aren't wanted anymore because their strategy of always being right and never governing doesn't work. It's not actually compatible with our form of government. There may be places that works. It doesn't work here. You can't win anything doing that. You only lose. And the Freedom Caucus is so good at losing. The Federal Freedom Caucus loves losing. They're like addicted to it. And we got to get off of that. And so as Republicans, I'm just going to say this. Love to see the Freedom Caucus lose. I'm happy about it every single time it happens. I don't care if they're good, constitution-loving people. They can't govern. So they need to quit trying. Go be a rabble rouser. Go be a PCP. Go be a whatever. Go on the Facebook groups. Stop trying to hold office where you have to make tough decisions because they refuse to make tough decisions.
Yeah. 62-member House has 29 guaranteed new members poised to take office in January.
Gee.
So that is just a bloodbath. So around 43 of the House seats are poised to go to people who either oppose the Freedom Caucus or ran against the Freedom Caucus members, and have characterized themselves as traditional Republicans, which is known as an antonym of the Freedom Caucus. That is wild that it was that big of a bloodbath. So that's pretty amazing. Huh. Well, I'll be curious to see how that plays out because I do think at the end of the day you still have to you got to govern your state and listen, like I don't like government either. It's gotten too big, but we still have to have government.
Sure, I'm not an anarchist.
That's still important. Like you got to have like we voted against the gas tax, right? And nobody was for the gas tax. It was rammed down our throat. There was no oversight. There was nothing. Republicans were spot on where they were right with where the clear majority of where Oregonians are. We were right there. It doesn't mean that we don't want to have a functional ODOT, that we don't want to have functional roads in Oregon. And it doesn't mean that we don't want to pay for it. It means like we want to build roads. We want to make sure that taxpayer funding is going into the right spot where it's supposed to be. It's not spent on DEI and CPP and a bunch of other crap that goes back to coffers, that goes back to campaigns that run against us. So we're just asking for some simple oversight. And I think the Freedom Caucus will be like, no taxes forever. And it's like, well,
right.
No, because somebody's got to pay for the roads. So I think that is the difference between it all, and that's the way I see it. But I don't know. It'd be. I just thought that was an interesting article to see like Wyoming go that far because they even threw out Dick Cheney's daughter. Remember with that whole thing, and she would. Of course, she wasn't even a Republican, but I mean that's. But I do find that to be a fun, interesting tidbit of an article to read about the Freedom Caucuses there. I was going to look and see, because I think they were the only ones that were sued. I was looking around. There wasn't really a lot of other ones that have been very organized as far as on the state level.
No, the only other big group like that went down was the folks that voted against Trump's redistricting in a couple of those states. Those guys got their bottoms handed to them. overall, I would say it's probably specifically localized to Wyoming. And I mean, Wyoming's a funny state. There is, they had a check gate. So apparently their legislative sessions, I think, are like 90 days. So very short. And it was apparently dominated by this controversy where a local GOP leader went to the floor of the House and Senate and passed out contribution checks, which apparently is not against their rules. And that created a massive scandal. And they had to figure out what their rules are going to be now for that. So anyway,
That's
awesome. Wyoming, still very much the Wild West on many of these issues, I guess. So, as to be expected as it is in the West.
Hey, before you take a vote on that, let me give you this check.
I believe that was the concern. Again, I don't think, like, a lot of people think, oh man, they received $1,000 from pharma, that's going to change their opinion. I guarantee you it doesn't. Pharma's giving the 1,000 because these guys have voted for stuff that, policy that they like. That you don't, as a politician, get $1,000 and go, oh my gosh, I can't cross these people.
Yeah.
But what you do, I do think though that there's this perception that nobody's tied to anything, and I think that's not true. But it should be, and I think oftentimes is, influential people in your community, and you and as a legislator, you are careful to make sure that you are at least responsive to those people and explain why you voted the way you did. Doesn't always change how you feel, but if you mess with too many of those influential people, guess what? They all hang out, they all talk, and they go, wow, we really don't like this person anymore. Maybe we should find someone else to run and finance them. And that stuff does happen. And so there are, but it's people in your community. And that's how it should work, is you have to be responsive to the people that are in your community and that back the issues that you care about. For instance, if you come from farm country and then you vote against farm stuff, well, maybe the Farm Bureau is going to show up and go, hey, we don't like you very much anymore. That's just logic, though. That isn't bought influence. That's your community saying, we don't think you represent us very well. And that's legitimate. That's the way government works.
It's supposed to, right?
Yep.
Well, it does go to show you, you brought up President Trump. Like, I think betting against President Trump has not been very fruitful for people that bet against his within the Republican Party. Like, I think he has a 95% win record in the U.S. Senate and like a 92% in Congress in primaries.
Brian, I can't think of a Republican that has gone, I'm going to fight Trump, and has won. They all lose. Yeah. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with them or not, fighting Trump directly has resulted in a great many of people either deciding not to run again because they knew they were going to lose, or running again and losing. Like, that's just what happens. So if you want to stay in office, don't fight Trump. If you would like to get out of office, knock yourself out. You'll take yourself out just as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and that's why, the last topic I had, unless you had anything else, was just this whole idea, and we were talking about a little bit before with President Trump, because he just came out with the 300,000 ton of, beef. And, like right now, the average cost of ground beef, is like $6 a pound or something like that. So it's high, right? So cattle on a 1,200 pound, 1,100 pound steer, is getting pretty good. Probably costs you about $2,500 if you were to buy it alive. So if you start doing the math and all that, $6 a pound is really where you end up. And I'm seeing a lot of groups that are critical of President Trump by doing that sort of stuff again. And here's where I'm going to layer this argument is that I think that whoever is advising Trump with the ag community is not doing a good job of talking to the ag community. Like I'm seeing it all over the place, right? And this is just another example of it. But the problem isn't President Trump. He's just like, oh, Band-Aid, see problem, fix problem, Band-Aid, right? And that's what he's trying to get at. And I think the biggest problem facing the cattle industry isn't 300,000 pounds of beef. That equates to like a quarter pounder that people buy per year. Like, it's not that much in the grand scheme of it. The biggest problem we have in America is that we don't have cattle ranchers. Like we have beaten this industry down to the point to where there's only so many people out there who are raising cattle, and we don't have a lot of processing plants. We don't have
That's right.
inspection plants to send stuff through. We have a state like Oregon who just destroys any family farm or ranch they can on every level as soon as they try to pass it down because their state taxes are stupid.
We have CAFO restrictions.
CAFO restrictions. We got inspection restrictions. We got ag overtime restrictions. We got ag housing restrictions. We got everything you can do. We got groups that sue us every time we want to actually go out and graze somewhere. Instead, we just let it burn. 2 million acres of grazing is gone. So we have all of these things. When is the last time we put new water rights on ground to actually grow grass that cattle could actually grow? I can't even tell you the last time OWRD, Vicky's favorite agency, actually approved a water right to grow more hay. Like, there's so many other things that's causing the depletion of the sheer cattle numbers in America that led to President Trump saying we got to import some beef to alleviate the $6.88 a pound. And I just think it's disingenuous and, quite frankly, politically stupid, to your whole point with going up against President Trump, for these groups whose members basically all support President Trump to now blame him for the destruction of their industry. Like, he's not destroying the cattle industry by bringing in 300 ton of beef. That's not the end of it. It has nothing to do with that. Cattle ranchers now, I wish I had more cows to sell because the price is really good. Yeah. So they're all doing pretty, and the price of hay's low. So the reality is cattle ranchers are doing really good. And also, it's not like they're they're trying to grow their numbers as fast as they possibly can, but they can only grow them as fast. It takes a while. It takes a couple of years for you to grow a cow and make a calf, because a heifer has to become a cow, and then that cow has to become pregnant and then have a calf. That takes about 3 to 4 years before you're actually creating more cows that have calves. And so then you're probably more on the 4-year to even 4.5-year cycle before you actually see a steer come out of a newly born cow that, makes it to the market. So you have a long time. And I think that sometimes you have to pinch that Band-Aid and create that bridge, right, between the two areas. And there's just, the reality is there's not enough cattle ranchers. We need more cattle ranchers.
And I think that is the sort of thing where it's like, it's going to take a long time to change the policies to get us more cattle ranchers. And so whether, American cattle ranchers, American farmers in other, food related industry, politicians and people who are not farmers all care a lot about what the price of food is, and they want it to be low. The lower the price of food is, the harder that hits the farmers, obviously. And so what you need to do is you got to do your best to dereg and reduce costs on the farmers where you can, where it's safe to do so. Obviously, we're not going to eliminate basic safety related stuff, but you got to reduce the knucklehead red tape regulations that cost them money to do stuff they're already going to do safely and do well, right? Yeah. And then and relieve them on that side. But that stuff takes a lot more time than just going, I'm going to lift the tariff on out of country beef. And I get why farmers are frustrated. They have not been treated well by, I would say, members of both parties. A lot of times Republicans at the federal level don't do everything they want because they are focused on reducing the price of food, although I tend to think Republicans are better on ag quite a bit than Democrats. And when Democrats are in control, obviously they get hit hard on the environmental impacts. And so it is tough to be a farmer, but you also got to understand that what the goal is. And I think the farmers will also tell you their goal is to make food affordable. And it's just disagreements on the best policies to get you there. And sometimes the politicians have to turn the knob that's easy to turn versus the one that takes a long time and is harder to. And that's just based on the electoral and the realities of what they can and can't do quickly.
Well, a lot of farmers are taking government subsidies too for their wheat and other things. So we also have to realize you can't blame them and then be at the trough. And you can't yell at them through one door and then open up the other door and say, hey, where's the farm package where it gives us our our guaranteed floor for our, for our wheat or for our soybeans or whatever it is that we're getting from the government. So ag has always been in that weird space, and you're right, probably been treated slightly better by Republicans and slightly worse by Democrats. But it always seems, no matter what, ag has always been in the crosshairs of both. And
I get it.
And we try to fix it, but a really good example of just red tape, for instance, like why we don't have cattle ranchers. We were just on this housing tour over in Senator Nash's district, northeastern Oregon. He took us all the way up to Joseph, Oregon, which is a lot of cattle ranchers up there, a lot of cattle. He's got 260 some acres that he's got. It's dry land. He's got this little 1 acre corner of it that he would like to say, hey, why couldn't a family that has this cattle ranch going on the corner of this field build a house? And then on that house, they could have a family member or somebody come back and live on that 1 acre, that 2 acres of dry land that's just middle of nowhere. And they could help out the family ranch and they could do more. And then you get another person working, moving cattle and all those sort of things. Like another instance, like if you have a pivot, right? Usually in the corner of your pivots, you got little dry land corners. Like why not, allow somebody to put a house there? You know who won't? The crazy Nazi Thousand Friends of Oregon and Central Oregon Land Watch and all these freaking, groups who don't let us build homes. Well, where do you think no kid can come home and build a home and like help out the family farm and the family ranch? None of that exists. So that's just one example of a red tape in Oregon that is destroying us from being able to actually.
They literally want a system where if anybody says, hey, I would farm that dry patch of ground that I don't own and won't ever actually farm, but if I would do that, then you can't build on it. That's what they want. And that's just not reality. That's insane. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They want all of the farmland to be publicly owned and owned by the state. This would be their ideal scenario, I think. The state owns all the farmland. The farmers get to lease it. And then they get to work the land. They work for the government. I think that literally is their ideal scenario. Yeah. I don't think they want literally anyone, but especially not farmers, to own private property. And I just think that's I can't even talk about it anymore because it's so crazy and it makes me angry every time. But we have a system in America, and America's built on you own your property. And they want a system where the government, if they can own it, controls everything that you do with it. And that's not American. That's not an American system. No, I think it's fine. It's fine to have simple regulations on that so that people, so that you can kind of have an idea of what's going to be happening where, but it's not the government's job to control every single aspect of the use of land.
Well, they want it to be, and I think that's
sure.
America was built on private property rights, and we just have to be. And I guess my frustration just comes down to, I wish these groups, and they're notoriously, right of center, that you see out there, don't take a political opportunity to blast Trump and support Democrats in Oregon when the real problem is not President Trump or Republicans. The whole reason why we're in the pickle we're in is because of these left-wing policies that have just crippled, working ranches and working families from actually trying to expand their cattle ranch operations. There's just we haven't even touched on the fact that they hate cattle from the left does. They hate cattle because they think they fart too much, and they put too much like,
right. 100%.
What do you call it, into the air. And so they hate that sort of stuff. That's why they didn't like the CAFO things, right? They were always against that. And it's like, that's why they want to regulate us to death. And we got to figure out a better way to go about it. If you want beef prices to be, $3 a pound instead of $6. Now there needs to be a sweet spot, by the way, because cattle ranchers actually like a little higher beef prices. Don't get me wrong, because you want to be able to sell your calf for, $3 a pound is great if you're selling a 600-pound steer, right, to a feedlot. So that's pretty decent money. Like you're finally making a couple of bucks. But there is a sweet spot, like they always say the price of oil.
Yep.
Like there's kind of a sweet spot in cattle ranching where you want the price of hay to be a certain spot and your price of cattle to be a certain spot where everybody's making, a couple of bucks, and then we can kind of hold steady on the actual food price. And I think that's the game that's trying to be played here.
There you go, Brian. You figured it out. We just need the government to set the prices, and then that'll fix everything. You're totally right. No, and that's why these socialists like Bernie Sanders, they say that, because it's like, well, then that fixes the problem. Obviously, it doesn't. It doesn't fix the problem whatsoever. It creates more corruption. But anyway, we should probably wrap it up.
The market will determine that, just like we don't like rent control. It's no different, right? The market, once the market determines if the price has gone too high, then all of a sudden you're going to get private investment to come in and build apartment complexes because they're getting $1,800 a month for a one bedroom. So they're like, shit, yeah, I'll come in and build that. They're not going to want to build if you're only getting $600 a month and you can't ever raise your rent. So the market needs to fluctuate, and the market, private enterprise, will always find the sweet spot, because it turns out that the market can ultimately fix it all if we just kind of get out of the way, because you can't control markets.
It's true.
So that's true. Our dissertation for the day, Reagan. I think we've done enough.
Read The Wealth of Nations.
There you go.
Understand how the economy works. Stop messing it up.
That's the message. Weekend, is this Monday? Is that Labor Day, or is it literally like a week from Monday?
No, it's a week from it's like a week.
2 weeks. It's like it's super
It's
late.
on the 7th, I think, this 7th. Year.
Yeah,
it's
right before Ledge Day.
Woohoo!
Labor Day and Ledge Day.
Labor Day is kind of when the campaigns really like kick into gear. So of course that's when you'd schedule legislative days. Who is doing? I need the speaker's office, and please, I beg you, just ask 5 more people about your calendaring, and we can give you feedback. It is terrible. The president's office as well. We beg you, please ask more people about ledge days. We need it to not be scheduled the way it's being scheduled right now. It doesn't work. Got to remember, these candidates have to go out there and campaign. Help them out.
It is pretty horrendous. Like the timing is just, so silly. Do it in what? Do we really need one? Do we really need a ledge days? No.
In the fall of an election year? No, we do not. No, we do not.
That is another one.
There is nothing. There is nothing productive that will happen at that legislative days that isn't electioneering, basically, from the legislative side. It's just not. It's a bad choice, and I would like December ledge days. I totally get. Maybe December ledge days should be longer because we're prepping for a long session. I mean, again, we got to think creatively, think outside the box. I have ideas. Please ask. I may send them unsolicited here. I'm getting desperate.
I think it's just in this scenario of wanting to continue to have more government, because, the only thing, Reagan, that would be more important to anybody is to make sure that the legislature's there more, because that helped anybody like never. I think we need to be there less, because there's so many regulations and stuff out there that people can't even keep up with what's been passed. So, and everybody just keeps, and we're guilty of that too. Like you're always tinkering with, and most of it is, I think most of our stuff is tearing down other shit that's been passed. I think most of our legislation has to do with us removing things. So, well, all right, buddy. Well, have a good Labor Day. I'm sure we'll talk before then, knowing that it's 2 weeks from now, but we'll see what happens politically. We had enough couple of things that built up that we were able to talk about a couple of things. I think the dominant factor is probably the governor's race, but we'll see what happens over the course of the next 2 weeks.
Sounds good, Brian. Looking forward to it.
Talk to you soon.